Today I'm here with Tracy Moore, the one and only Tracy Moore. Thank you so much for joining me today. Oh, I got to dance. The
You got
excitement.
shimmy. I'm very happy to be with you here today, Deepa. It's nice because I never get to see you and connect with you. So this is awesome.
I know, it's insane. Like, I've done a couple segments for City Line, but it's like never with you personally. And I'm like, when will I get to chat with Tracy? So I feel like today's the day.
Today is the day.
So obviously, it's Black History Month, and it's such an important thing to celebrate the month and really pay homage to those who have paved the way for so many people. And I feel like you have done that for so many people. Obviously, you're an icon, a living legend in Canadian media. Yes. Yes, you are. Embrace it, girl. I'm like, on top of that, you're a strong, powerful Black woman. So take me back to the beginning of your journey. Was your goal always to be a television host?
I do have some colleagues from when I was doing my master's program in journalism that were like, Tracy, you said in class you were going to have your own show. And I'm like, ew, I was gross. Why do I have friends if I was that girl? So apparently I said it.
Oh.
I was like, no, I'm going to have my own show. I don't remember it that way. I remember thinking I want to go into radio. Radio was sort of the main thing. I felt like, oh, you don't have to have fake eyelashes. There's a little bit more independence than you have in television. You don't have a clunky camera following you around. And I felt you could get to the real story quicker with radio. It didn't end up that way because my first internship was in TV. So apparently this was where I was supposed to be. And I'm really happy I landed here.
Interesting. So with your internship, did that kind of switch gears for you after doing that, where you're like, oh, TV is meant for me?
Yeah, because you get in the building and you are basically speaking to the people who work in TV to try and get your next real job.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was in a newsroom. And so I thought, this is what I'm going to do. If I can get a job in television, I'm going to stick in television. When you're starting your career, you just want something. Yeah. And so my first job was in TV, and I was assigning camera crews, and very far from being a reporter, but I knew I could work my way into the newsroom.
Being in this entertainment industry, the media industry itself, it's such a tough thing to do because so many people have their eyes on you. And obviously, as the host of City Line, I grew up watching you. So even to have this conversation and talk about all this is really, really important to me as well. So when you were transitioning into that role, because it is a huge role, was there ever a level of doubt that you may have faced internally as a Black woman? Were you concerned that people would have negative thoughts and comments towards you because you were a Black woman that was put in a position of prominence? And if you did feel those things, how did you deal with it?
Every single day I second guessed myself. But here was the thing. I was reluctantly, put into this role of, hey, you should audition for City Line. And I thought, why? I was going to be Diane Sawyer. I'm going to host 2020. I'm going to do foreign correspondent war reporting. And the more I thought about it with my husband, the more he was getting me hype. He's like, no, the lifestyle space. We're a young family. We just had a baby. We're buying our first house, trying to make meals on a budget. He was selling it hard, and it got me excited. So the more I was auditioning, the more I thought, man, this would kind of be a nice break from the 6 alarm fires and the child abductions and the homicides that I'm doing daily. And I realized that this was going to be a Herculean effort to try and get into the hearts and minds of Canadians, because I could see how tied they were to the City Line brand, but also to the former City Line host. I mean, as they should be. She was there for years. And when I started, I received some really nasty emails. I got some nasty emails. I got some nasty letters. And I said to myself, you're going to have to get out there into that studio, make all of your mistakes in front of the entire country, and put your head down and figure it out and do it, because this is a great opportunity. So I knew if I slid into the dark hole of they all hate me, I look so different from the old host, I don't belong here. If I slipped into that, it was going to be debilitating. And so there was a lot of self-talk because I didn't know what I was doing. And there was a steep learning curve from news to lifestyle. And I had to learn it in front of people in real time. But the opportunity was so exciting. So I just put it aside. And I think a lot of people of color and a lot of Black women and a lot of Indigenous people have to do that in these spaces all the time. It's sort of how we get by.
It's sad that like that's the truth, that that's how you have to get by. That's the reality of, you know, coming into a role like this. But self-talk isn't always easy as well, right? Like you actually have to have that own belief in yourself and have a genuine belief in yourself for it to actually keep you going. And that's a really tough thing to do when you're publicly you know, seen by people on a daily basis, and you constantly have to fight that battle internally. So you know, obviously people have their attachments to hosts that they've liked previously, but what was the general reaction like to your debut as the host of Cityline?
I feel like I have some blinders on about that because the negative comments really pierced, and I feel like I held on to them and put them in some place where I couldn't really deal with them at the time, but they were still in a place. Some people tell me, gosh, I liked you from episode 1. I thought you were great. You were my pick because many people auditioned. And I felt both of those things. I felt that people were giving me a chance and giving me time to get good at the job. I also felt that there was resistance to me, and I put all of it aside. So in retrospect, I would say Canada did give me an opportunity to get better. I am so caring for people who have just jumped into a job that is public facing, because I don't think people understand that when you're learning a job and people are watching you, there is that extra added pressure that you have to add to your mental game. Most people don't work in an office and have someone looking over their shoulder at everything they're typing. It's a weird situation to be in, but this is the life we choose if you're going to be on radio or television or in broadcast. So I feel that people gave me an opportunity to get good at it. There were some viewers that I called. They would write me letters and leave their phone number, and I would call them and I would say, okay, Edith, I know I'm not very good, but please keep watching. As a matter of fact, if you can come down to the studio, we would love to host you.
Wow.
And some of those people, I think, are the ones that were truly disarmed, because they're like, all right, she knows she kind of sucks, but she understands she's going to get better, like we all do at any job that we do. And they gave me a chance.
That's the best thing that you can ask of people, is for them to give you a chance and grow with you and learn with you along that process. You know, you made this comment about being in the public eye. It's like someone watching over you all the time, right? Like in an office space. And I feel like there's a lot of tiptoeing in this industry itself, of like, you know, tiptoeing around who you actually are as a person and keeping up almost like a front, right? You don't want to ever let your guard down in that sense. So looking back at your career, do you think there was a defining moment for yourself where you kind of just let your guards down and you unapologetically let you be yourself? You let yourself be a Black woman on air without having to worry about what anybody said about you.
It was so incremental. There was definitely not a point where I was like, all right, like Beyonce at the Super Bowl, like, oh, she's Black. There wasn't a moment like that. It was more incremental. It was, oh, I told them that I don't cook, even though I'm doing cooking segments twice a week, and they're okay with it. Oh, I told them that I don't like this, and they're okay with it, you know? So I think the more people accepted the parts, the authentic parts of myself that I put out there, the more I felt comfortable talking about my Jamaican background, talking about growing up in the club, talking about, you know, how I want my food to be seasoned, talking about you know, the nuances of my family, my, you know, nuclear Jamaican Canadian family. And so it was almost like, as they encouraged me to be me, I became more me. And I think the Black thing really came to a head because over time, like, people understood, I would like to see more diversity on the show. I would like to have more stories being told on this platform. But last year, summer was, my goodness. I don't know if you felt it, Deepa, but from a Black public facing lifestyle host to all of a sudden be in a space, in generally a white space, and have people say, well, we want to hear about your racism and your trauma. And we didn't know this was going on. So, like, tell us all about it and please help us fix it. And like now, because we're uncomfortable and we need to come to some conclusions and get to the other side of this. It was a lot. Like 2020 was a lot. It was a weird space to be in because there was frustration as to why now? Why do you see this now?
Yeah.
Race was not the sort of thing I spoke about in mixed company because the conversation always went sideways. Always. I'd either learn something about someone I loved dearly that would make me not want to be their friend anymore, or I'd be in a situation where I had to appease them the rest of the conversation and make them feel like, no, 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 you're not racist, but what you said was ignorant. It never went anywhere. So last year, having people say to me, no, we want to talk about this. I mean, people who were not my Black girlfriends or my husband or my parents, we want to talk about this. It put me in a very interesting spot. And it was really draining, but it was also kind of hopeful, but it was also a little frustrating.
Obviously, like you said, 2020 was such a huge year for all of the conversations about like the Black Lives Matter movement. So do you feel like this was the first time in your career where people actually wanted to hear from you about your experiences? Or do you think like it was more of a lip service thing, or like actual change had to be made?
I don't know. We had actually dealt with some very serious subject matter on City Line before 2020. And I definitely used my social media as the opportunity to be my full self versus the show where I felt like, okay, I have to represent Canada here. So I think there was an understanding of how I felt about these things. But I think that the whole situation came to a head last year. And I think people were actually feeling really guilty and really bad, you know? And I think that there was this eye-opening situation and folks didn't like looking around and looking at the reality of what had been happening under their noses, and they'd had the privilege of ignoring. And so I don't think it was all lip service. I think people actually, they felt bad inside and they wanted to fix it, you know? Now, is that sentiment going to lead to substantive change? I don't know. You know, if you ask cynical Tracy, she's got her doubts. There was, you know, at some point last year, I was sort of like, I'm going to start pulling back from these conversations because I'm feeling a little exhausted and I don't know if these are going anywhere. And I hate to say that, but that is the honest truth.
You can share as many thoughts and have as many conversations as you want, but there's only so much you as one person can do, really. And it's almost like you had mentioned, sometimes it can become a daunting task of babysitting people and be like, oh no, like, you know, you're not what you think you are and all of that, right? So it becomes this like cyclical thing. But you mentioned social media and how your social media is more of a space that allows you to be a bit more personal than what you might be like showcase on City Line. So talking about your social media in specific, how do you use that for advocacy?
I've been using social media for advocacy almost from the start because subversively, my whole page is about Black joy. These are the representations I didn't grow up seeing. I lived it. I had, you know, my mom and my dad and my sister and my cousins, but I never saw us represented in media. There was the Cosby Show for a minute, which everybody thought was, you know, sort of this very extraordinary Black family that didn't really reflect reality. Well, it's like there are many middle class and middle class to lower middle class Black families out there loving each other, thriving, going through challenges, succeeding, failing, just living life. And I knew that my page would be part of that. You know, as partners, my husband and I are raising these kids and we're doing the best we can. And it's a universal story of parenthood. We just very rarely see Black faces having these regular life experiences. So, and you know, that was in the back of my mind that yes, I'm doing this thing while I'm also sort of, you know, just showing my life, but there's a larger message there always. And then there would be things happening that I could not ignore, like shootings happening in Canada and the United States. And there were times I would comment about it because I would feel so deeply about it on my Instagram. And I would have people saying, well, I cannot believe as a television host that you are talking about this. And I would think to myself, do you not see that I'm a Black woman? I understand I host a show, but
Yeah.
I'm a Black woman. I can't be upset about young Black men being shot in the street and police brutality. Like, that's outside of my wheelhouse. Am I a robot? And those are the sort of responses I would get, but it never really stopped me. So I've always sort of jumped into politics where I feel very deeply about it. And then also just have slices of life about my family. That's always been my page.
It's so interesting to think that people actually genuinely believe because you are a TV host, you are not allowed to have opinions. Like, outside of
Yeah,
that realm.
I think they think it's political. They don't understand that it's actually human rights. You
Yeah.
know, I think they think it's like left wing, right wing, you know, like this isn't political. This is about people living a life without having their life threatened.
Mhm.
I should be able to comment on that. We should all be able to comment on that.
Oh, 100%. And I feel like, aside from your personal social, you've also opened up a lot about that on Cityline as well. Like, you've been such a huge advocate for about like systemic racism and fighting systemic racism and talking about white supremacy and all those topics. So for a lifestyle show like Cityline, it's a bit unheard of to kind of open up the floor to chat about stuff like that. So
Yeah.
what has the reception to those messages been like? And do you feel like it's opened up a safe space for conversations to just ebb and flow, go back and forth?
I think from this city line perspective, part of how we feel, and this is definitely beyond me as well, because my bosses feel the same way, it's that we want to give you all the tools to lead the best life you can. And that might be using your toilet paper rolls to make a DIY, or it may be how to deal with your racist uncle at Thanksgiving dinner. Like, we're going to give you all those tools. Maybe it's about gender pronouns. Maybe it's about teaching you the lexicon that is evolving when it comes to how we deal with gender and people in the LGBTQ 2+ community. We want to give you all those tools because you need all those tools in 2021 to actually live a good life. And it is a little unheard of. I'm happy that we have the will and we have the passion and we have a team that believes that we're in this space and we need to be part of the agenda setting versus just following along what everyone else is doing in Canadian daytime television. So the first thing I want to say about reaction internally is that I am incredibly proud of the experts on our show. There were over 80 experts on the show, and they have reached out to me to say, oh my gosh, like, I'm so proud to be associated with this. I know I have work to do, but I'm so proud that you were stepping so boldly into this space. Like, this is so good for all of us. And those messages are really heartening to me because they're my coworkers, really and truly. From viewers, I'm seeing a lot of positive thoughts. I'm seeing some people that are still doing the "you're Black" situation, and other people that are saying, "Okay, this is good. This is all information that we need. This is helping us. This is keeping us on top of what we need to know." And so we're going to keep going.
Yeah, do your thing. I mean, I feel like any step in that direction is a step towards progress and like opening up people's mindsets. And there's, again, only so much that you could do, only so much that Cityline can do to be a part of those conversations. But the fact that you're willing to take the chance to do that is so super important. And one thing that you've talked about before that I found really interesting is this idea of code switching. Like, there's a Tracy at work and a Tracy at home. So, and you kind of have to switch between the two of them. So do you still feel the need to code switch today?
I'd say I code switch way less now. As of last year, the code switching has gone down a lot. In the beginning, the code switching was, coming from news where the code switching was like complete, moving into lifestyle where it's like, oh, okay, so I am the story. So more of my life was revealed. But then now adding the whole race thing, I could always talk about the gender thing. I couldn't talk as freely about the race thing.
Right.
Or even sort of, respond the way I really want to respond when it comes to things like race. And now I feel like the floor is open and I really have an obligation because there are communities out there waiting for me to speak up on all of our behalves. And I'm not saying we're a monolith and we don't all think the same, but it's important for me to actually stand in the space and be true to who I am. And that's always been important to a certain extent, but the race part, definitely I feel, I can step into it and say what I'm thinking.
And talking about race is a scary thing sometimes because it's such a touchy and iffy subject for a lot of people. So, being so vocal about it, was there ever a thought in the back of your mind of like, oh, and I hate this term so much, but like the thought of being labeled as like a loud, angry Black woman? Because a lot of the times when Black women speak out, that's what they're labeled as. So, was there ever thoughts about that running through your head?
Oh my gosh, 100%. I think about everything. I'm a Capricorn. I'm an overthinker. I'm thinking about everything. I'm thinking about what's going to be happening 17 minutes from now. Like I'm thinking about it all. So yeah, I mean, there are people commenting on the post I put out today because I wore a shirt that says phenomenally Black. Like, oh, how dare you? All lives matter.
Oh God.
Yes, everyone matters. I'm not saying everyone doesn't matter. I'm just saying some people aren't treated like they matter. I have had moments. I had a moment in particular where we were doing an hour-long race special for Cityline. And I had had a summer of dealing with this topic. I had had a summer of trauma, just like so many of us did. And I kept pushing back the race show, partially because I didn't want to do it in the moment and it's cool and we need to talk about it now so we can put it aside. I want to do it later when everyone's forgotten about BLM. Then we were getting close to the time to do the show and I started getting scared. So I wanted to start the show with an open letter, and I had this open letter prepared and it was really hardcore and it was really honest. And I sent it to my bosses and they said, okay, like there's nothing wrong with this, but we need to work through some of the parts. And I thought to myself, can I actually stand on set and say this stuff? And I found myself like getting like really anxious about it and like sleeping bad. And then I felt like I don't want to be a part of this anymore. What was happening, Deepa, is I was running out of courage. And I had this meeting with the two bosses that are closest to me. I've never done this before. And you might understand this as a woman of color, but when someone gives you an opportunity to do something, you just do it. Like, my immigrant parents would actually faint if they found out I scheduled a meeting with my bosses to say that I'm feeling weak, because that's essentially what I did. And I said to them, I don't know if I can do this. I'm running out of courage. I can't be the only one. And they're like, but you're not the only one. We're here with you. And I'm like, I go into work. My cameramen are white. The control room is white. My producers are white. And I understand everyone has the sentiment and everyone's behind it, but I'm in this space saying these things and I'm running out. I'm running out of guts. I'm running out of courage. I feel shaky. I feel anxious. Help me. And they said, okay. What do you need? Do you need to not do the open letter? We'll skip the open letter. Do you need to not do the show? They said, we don't think that's a good idea. We think Cityline should do a race special, but we will can the show. Do you want to do the show in 2021? What do you want to do? And it felt incredible to feel supported like that, because it's isolating. It's isolating. You feel like you're the one that's fighting like the wind. And is anyone listening? Is this worth it? Because I have 2 kids to look after and a husband and a house and chores. So if this isn't working, if it's not landing, I need to stop and just take care of myself. And that is the reality of being the one that has the platform and the responsibility to be saying all these things. Now, listen, I feel very ungrateful for even complaining. There are people, frontline workers that are out there. There are people that are Black and do not have this platform and do not have access to resources. They're living in low-income housing, they would never have the opportunity to even complain to a boss. They might not even be working. So it bothers me to even complain about it, but I do want to give sort of a picture of, maybe the struggle that happens in my mind. And I understand I have privilege, and I understand I'm so lucky to have this job, but even with it comes great responsibility. And some days I don't feel up to the challenge.
That's totally fair. And everybody's own journey, doesn't matter what industry, what career path you've gone down, everybody has their internal struggles. So I think what you were dealing with is real on so many levels, because there's an added pressure, like you're saying, you're this one voice kind of fighting against everything. And it's like, well, just me out here alone. And that's a very, very tough thing to deal with. But I do really love that you said that you felt supported by your team. And I think across the board in this industry, I feel like there needs to be way more support for people of color in the industry. And I don't mean to like take away from anybody's experiences, but like being a person of color in this industry is not easy. You're always going to have naysayers. You're always going to have people pulling the race card of like, you're in the position you are because they needed to fill a quota. And that's basically it. Right. And it's very, very frustrating. So what do you think the entertainment industry can be doing better to support people of color and Black content creators?
I think first I think people have to get past their fragility. Like, you have to understand that your experience is not the only and absolute truth. There's so many people that might even be walking in lockstep with you, and they're having a completely different go of the experience than you are. And I think if we could all sort of wrap our minds around that, that would be step one. Me knowing that I have support allows me to bring my A game into the workplace. It's better for the company. Like, that's the bottom line. So when I feel supported, it's like, whoa, you're going to get 110% out of me. If people feel safe and they trust, because trust is crucial, their bosses and their coworkers to show up as themselves, they will perform. And so part of that is having workplaces that understand and support people the way they show up, and give them every indication that whoever they are is exactly what the company needs. I don't know if that means enacting policies. I mean, we don't even have what's the protocol for dealing with a microaggression? I don't know. Would you really go to HR for that? Would they understand? Having those, having sort of an airtight system so people feel that if they aren't feeling safe, they can say something. There's someone to talk to. And at the baseline, we need to have a better multiracial landscape across the board. I'm not talking about the window dressing like you and I'm talking about the decision makers. We need the managers and the directors and the folks all the way up that reflect all of the different communities that work within this company. Because as soon as I'm not alone anymore, and I'm not the only one howling at the wind looking for change, I'm carrying less of the load. And so that's what we need. We need more folks getting through the door so that we can all figure out how to do this together, and we don't have like a few people sort of carrying very heavy sacks up a steep hill.
Of course. I really hope it's like a sooner than later type of situation for those changes to be implemented, because it's so crucial and critical to a lot of people's experience in this field and in a lot of different fields itself. But, I want to end this off with getting your personal advice, because again, like, I cannot reiterate how much I admire you, how many, like, so many people admire you, because you are so strong and you are such a real and genuine person. So what would your words of advice be for young people of color who want to enter this field?
Now is a good time to reach out to other people of color who have been in the field. When I started, it wasn't such a good time. People wouldn't help me.
Like, did you have a mentor at the time, or did you just kind of...
I had no mentors, and trust me, Deepa, I tried so hard. I tried to make connections. I don't know, maybe I'm annoying. They didn't work out. They're like, go away. It's like, oh, I really admire you. They're like, go away. So find someone who's in the industry. I know you're probably helping folks that want to, you're lifting as you climb. I lift as I climb. I think that you will, if you reach out, you might be surprised to see that people will reach back and say, what do you need? Do you need advice? Anything from like negotiating a contract to people are being weird in the office. Is it me? Like, what does this whole thing mean? You need people to help you out, and we need to be better about making those connections and talking to other people, talking to other women of color, talking to other people in the industry that just know. And I feel like the will is there. Like we're building a good community in the broadcast world, and I think that you will find folks that will help you.
Mhm.
And that'll take you places for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely about, building people up and not tearing them down. And I think a lot of misconceptions that people might have about this industry is like, oh, it's dog eat dog. And like, no one's going to help you. You're on your own. But I feel like a lot of the times people are so willing to share their experiences, just like what you did
Yes.
today with all of us. Right. And, help people build their own path and, go on their own journey. So, Tracy, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed that conversation. It was super insightful, and I hope that people at home feel the same way. So thank you so much.
You are so welcome. I hope at one point I will see you in real life
Like
with no
4 years,
computer,
four
no
years from
screen in
now.
between us.
I know.
But I'm happy to be a part of this. So thank you so much, Deepa. And by the way, you are blazing trails. So
Thank
keep
you.
doing your thing. You're very, very good at what you do.
Thank you
I'm
so
turning into
much.
mom Tracy now. You're very good at what you do. And keep doing it. And you're making a lot of people out there very proud.
Thank you so much. I can feel myself turning red. That's a perfect
You're
interview. Thanks so much, Tracy.
welcome, hon.